All right. So thank you all for joining me here today. My name is Jay Hicks. I use he, him, and his pronouns. I'm here at University of Central Missouri, where I serve as Assistant Director for Resident Leadership and Interim Assistant Director for Housing Operations. I'm not sure why my screen decided to capitalize the half part of my job, but I find both of them just as important. So I'm here to talk to you about advising student organizations. I primarily advise student organizations within university housing. However, I have some experience advising those outside. And I find the experience of advising student organizations, the ones that I advise, very similar to the ones within student activities, fraternity and sorority life, and campus-wide. So I hope that some of the information that I do present to you today is helpful should you find yourself advising a student organization in graduate school or as a professional in our field. Operating. So a little bit about me. As I mentioned, I'm an advisor here. That is my primary role normally when we're not in 2020. But typically I am the advisor to United Student Housing Association as well as the National Residence Hall Honorary. Some past advising experiences that I have is advising Hall Council when I was a Residence Hall Director, advising Residence Hall Association, which is similar to USHA, which I advise now, Quad Council, which is an area council of different buildings, conference advisors to bring student delegations to conference, and advising Queers and Allies, which is a LGBTQA student group here at UCM that I hosted, advised when I was here in graduate school. So you can see as I've kind of run the gamut of different advising experiences through my almost 10 years of working in higher education. So it's become quite a passion of mine during my career so far. We can run around try to define what an advisor is, and for some of you may already kind of have an idea what that is and what that means for you. There is the cookie cutter version that we find in a dictionary, which is a person who gives advice in a particular field, but how vague is that? There's so many definitions of what it is, and it's more about what you do as an advisor than what some cookie cutter definition is going to be in a book. When someone says, what is an advisor, you are going to personify that. You're going to find that based on your behavior, what you give your students and what your students feel you give to them. So that is how you're going to define what an advisor is. And one of the biggest pieces that you're going to learn is when you're in job interviews or you're discussing your skill set is even my experience serving on recruitment for professional level positions is asking what is your advising philosophy and what is your supervision philosophy. So get those down as far as what it will be your style as a supervisor to a student staff and what will be your advising style. That's one of the main things you want to be able to portray. And so you want to know what the differences are. So for supervising, we're going to do a real quick reference on this. Those skills are about management, being assertive, developing skills, focusing on the rules, policies, and the flow chart down. So this is very much that hierarchical piece of how the policies start here and they run their way down, and it's your job to make sure they're implemented. Those roles are, resource manager, enforcer, bottom liner, authority figure. A lot of times supervisors are seen as a more of an authoritative type figure. In that operating mode that you have, you're about expectations, responsibilities, directives. There can be success or failure, then that can impact your role, your responsibilities as well. And then that constant flow of communication and feedback. And so you're going to see that being a difference when you are in a supervision type role. And those actions that you have as a supervisor, you're constantly evaluating. Reprimanding might be a word you hear. Hiring, firing, those aren't necessarily fun words and not ones that I like to use even as a supervisor myself, but ones that are more associated with a supervisor than there is as an advisor. So, as an supervisor, you oversee staff members that have a contractual agreement and benefits. So these are stipend, room and board, single room. So these students have extrinsic motivation to do what they want to do. But that means they're getting a paycheck, they're getting a free room, they're getting a meal plan, something that helps motivate them to do their job. Where your students who are volunteers for student organizations don't always have it. Some of them do, but for the most part, you're going to find that they do not have this benefit. When you're an advisor, you're using these different skill sets. You're a listener, you're using conflict resolution, you're a motivator. Because again, they're not always getting that extrinsic motivation. You're using group dynamic observation. So you're observing your group and seeing how they're interacting, what you need to do to help various executive board members interact with general body members to make sure that we're not only a good flow of communication, but the fact that they are communicating with one another. As a role, you're a motivator, you're a sounding board, you're a confidant, you're a moderator, you're an observer, you're taking all these different roles on. In the operating mode, the difference is from a supervisor, you're the facilitator. You're facilitating conversations about expectations. You're not forcing those expectations. You're facilitating the conversation about what they expect of you, what you expect of them, and what they expect of each other. Where these might be a little bit more solid as a supervisor, but then an advisor, these can be a little bit more fluid, allow you to build the conversations based on the student group that you have, rather than coming from the organization that you work for. With student advising, feedback and providing context is always important, especially if you have incoming students or freshmen, first-year students that don't have the context and history to understand what the roles might be. A lot of times they need to understand what the role is. For students that go through a student staff position, they understand because they went through the interview process. Students who join a student organization may not fully understand their role per the Constitution. So it's your role to step up and teach them that. And at any point in time, you will have questions that want to pop in, please let me know. I'll try to moderate the chat for everybody, as well as have my moderator help me with that as well. But as we kind of jump into what role does an advisor play, they lend a hand to help determine the goals of the group, whether as standstill or still forming. One of the important things to learn is group dynamic theory, to know is your group forming, storming, norming, or are they reforming? And so help them what is their goals as a group. Those will change year to year. What your one group has goals for this year is not going to be the same for the ones that I advise next year. It's going to be based on their interests, their goals, their motivation, not living in 2020. It's all going to be different. And so that's something that you have to be adaptive to. And advising teaches you to be a little bit more adaptive than, say, supervision. And an advisor does serve as an informed resource, role model, advocate, motivator, and many other roles. And these are great because these help you become a better skill set, have a better skill set, as a professional in our field. And if you're someone who wants to seek to be an advocate for students, that's what got me started in our field. If you want to be the person that helps motivate students, an advisor could be the role for you because it allows you to have all those different hats all at the same time while still having first direct hand experience with students, while all their might be more of a collateral role. For some of you, might be a hall director, and advising is part of that job. Or for me, advising is the bulk of my job. And so you can find different positions that allow you to have that direct student contact by being an advisor while you maintain different positions as your core. As I mentioned, the advisor role, those skills that you're going to hone in on, whether you have them now as an undergraduate, you find them as a graduate student in your graduate assistant role, or you find them as a professional. And I will say, some of these I had going into graduate school, some of them I developed in graduate school, and some I developed along the time of my career in my professional time in higher education. But being a good listener, conflict resolution, that's going to be number one. You're going to have groups that get along great, and you're going to have groups that do not. And it's going to be your role to kind of step in there and help mediate that piece. Think as your time as a student leader, where there's times you always got along with someone within your organization. And if you didn't, what did you need as a student leader to help you succeed? And think about what you would have needed from your advisor. Whether you got it and you know what skills you would use to model that, or if you didn't get that from that advisor, what would you do differently? And I know that I had advisors who did great things, and I model after them. And there's advisors that did not do so great, and that teaches me what to do better for when I come across that situation. Decision making as well as delegation. For your students, you're helping them know how to make decisions. Because your role is not to make decisions for them. You might help them lead into a direction, or you might have to play into politics sometimes. You'll learn about that in grad school too, where some decisions have to get made because of authoritative figures above you. But you're trying to teach them to delegate tasks, to help them have the experience. Because remember, it's not about you, it's about their experience as a student leader. You really want to be sensitive to the group dynamics, because you want to know, are these two people getting along over here? Is that affecting the group as a whole over here? So it's your job to be a little bit more observant, in these exec board meetings. Maybe it's, if you're just finding yourself talking a lot during exec board meetings or general body meetings, maybe it's time for you to take a step back and learn to listen a little bit more, so you can kind of hear and see what is going on around the room, because you'll pick up on things that others may not, just by simply observing. and being able to deal with the ambiguous nature that might come with student organization advising. It's not always going to be a cookie cutter of this is how this year is going to go, because you have a different set of students every year, different set of goals, and different set of years year to year. Because what happened in fall 2019 is not what's happening in fall 2020, and not just because of 2020 being its own special year, but it would have been different regardless. Touch on some of it already. So there's kind of the pitfalls of being an advisor. Things that, if you do it, you learn from your mistakes, you move forward. It's great, it's fine. That's the best part about being an advisor. You kind of tailor it along the way of how to be the best advisor. 10 years in, I'm not saying I'm always perfect. Even in this year, I'm finding ways that I need to be better as an advisor, whether it means I need to delegate better, whether it means I need to find more support for certain members. And I'm always honing in and changing it up to make sure I'm adapting for my students. But as an advisor, you're not there to run a meeting like you would for a staff meeting. You're there to make sure they're set up for success, but allow your president or your director to run that meeting. Allow them to create the agenda. If you need to create the first one initially to help them understand what they need to do, great. Let them run that meeting. Is for them, not for you. You're not there to force your opinions. You might have an idea or a suggestion, but make sure they know that it is an idea or a suggestion. When it's your time to speak as the advisor, provide them with, hey, here's an idea based on my experience, or here's a suggestion. Don't be saying, don't try to say things like, well, this is what we did in my undergrad, and this is what we're going to do here. Give them the idea because they might love it, want to run with it, or they might say, okay, it's on the table, we might discuss it. So it's your job not to force that upon them, but give them the ideas, the pieces that can build something great together. You're not there to do all the work with your officers, and this is one of the things I can get very guilty of because I can see my students being stressed this year. I can see them taking on a lot. And then if you're someone with me with high empathy, you want to take that away from them. You want to take a little bit pieces away to make them feel a little bit better. But it's not always your role to do the work for them. Maybe it's we're seeing with them what workload can they handle and how can their peers help them in the end too. It's not saying you don't pick up some work for them if they need it or get in the trenches with them. But know that you're not, at the end of the day, it's not your job to do the work for your officers. Do your best not to be too laid back or laissez-faire in your approach. I've seen this with advisors more on a professional level when advising isn't quite their jam. They're saying, well, it's part of my job, I got to do it. I'm just going to let them do their thing. You're missing out on a great experience to have with your students. Some of the best relationships I've maintained, the student relations I've maintained as a hall director from when I ended my time as a hall director in 2016 is because of the relationships I made during advising, not necessarily as a supervisor. And so the relationships that got me through difficult years, difficult semesters was the ones I had because I was an advisor to a student group. Also, try not to be so overbearing. I know it can be easier to start off a little more strict and ease up along the way. But know that, again, this experience is about your students and not you. So if you become too overbearing in the beginning, you might have students who might not get the buy-in. They might not see what is the reason they're getting involved. And if they don't quite connect with you right away because of that behavior, you might lose them in the end. And that's not the goal here as well. Also, don't become too complacent. You might feel like, okay, I got advising down. It's time to just hone it in. I got it. You're always changing. You're always adapting. As I mentioned, 10 years in, I'm still adapting my advising style. I still update my expectations every year based on the students that I have because I know that they're always changing. So make sure you're always changing as an advisor because the students that we had last year are not the ones we have this year. And in 4 years from now, they're going to change as well. So always making sure that you're being adaptive to the students that you're going to have coming in. As I mentioned before, you work with volunteers. They have no contract and very few tangible benefits. They're getting a pizza party once in a while. They're getting small things. So you need to find out what motivates them, and we'll kind of get to that. But for my student leaders, they get a small stipend for what they do. It's very minimal to the work that they do, and so that is some motivation to say, at the end of the semester, you get $200 because of the work that you did this semester. And for some of them, that makes a huge difference. That's textbooks, that's way to get home for break. For some of them, it helps them provide for their families. But comparative to RA or CA who get hundreds of dollars or free room, meal plan, it's different in the comparison of what motivates them. So you need to be understanding that these students are doing this voluntarily for a certain reason, and it's your job to find that out, what motivates them. For your student staff, if someone is not following a protocol following expectations, you can reprimand them. There can be a warning system. There can be probation, or in the end, you can relieve them of their duties as a staff member. With student volunteers, student leaders, you can't fire them. You can follow the Constitution that might have removable policies. However, it's not as simple as saying, we're moving you from position, goodbye. So a lot of times these constitutions have to be followed as far as how you remove a member, and it might not always be that easy. So feedback along the way, creating learning moments is how you motivate these students to do better. So giving them feedback now along the way is better than giving it in December when they could have changed and adapted in October and been doing great since then. So always provide feedback along the way rather than waiting until the end when it's a surprise. And a lot of times it's creating those learning moments to make them say that, aha, okay, I learned from doing this program when it failed. What did you learn that we need to do better with this program to make it better for next time? It's always those moments that you want to create with those students to help them be better and help you be better as an advisor, because then you learn how you can better assist them in the future, whether it's be a program, one-on-one relationships, how to communicate with them. You learn those along the way as well as what is special about that student. Our student orgs, they become motivated through different things. They want to have a fun experience and gain friendships. A lot of these students are first-year students who want to find their niche. They want to find where they belong. And that's one of my motivations, is that I want to make sure a student feels like they belong here, because if they don't, they're going to leave. There's no reason for them to retain here if they don't feel like they're part of the UCM community. And so that's my part, to make sure that they are having a fun experience as well as they're making a connection, because they connect to at least one person. That is one person that will likely help them stay here if they're having some difficulty feeling connected to the university. Secondly, they have the desire to develop leadership skills. They might not know what those skills they want to learn yet are. Along the way, it might be communication skills. It might be group dynamic skills. It might be financial, fiscal experience. So along the way, you're going to see what is it that they want to learn and what can you give them based on the positions that they have. Having a mentorship networking opportunity. It's important to know that as an advisor, you serve as an advisor, but a student chooses whether or not you are a mentor. You are not automatically a mentor to a student. They have to choose you. And so the opportunity is not only there to have a mentor, but it's an opportunity for you, for a student to choose you as a mentor. I know we have mentor mentees at this conference, and we use that language fluid, but I am a firm believer that a student chooses someone to be their mentor is not, to me, an automatic role that you can possess. They want to be a positive influence in their community. So how can you provide that for them? They want to belong to something that's larger than themselves and gain a sense of pride and accomplishment. They come to college and it's this big, wide open space of possibilities. And so you have the ability to create their niche, create something that's bigger to them, whether it be a program that they put on or an event. And, maybe they change a policy at the university. You're helping them see what is their legacy if they're leaving, in their 4 years. You also want to feel valued in what they do. Everyone wants to feel appreciated, feel accomplished. Tell me once in a job that you didn't like or a position you hated, was it because you didn't feel valued or appreciated? Very commonly, that is an issue, that you didn't feel appreciated, valued in the work that you did. And that is part of the reason why you left. And so that's for student leaders. They need to feel like they are valued in the work they do and who they are personally. And for that, you need to know what motivates them, what challenges them, and what their values are. So ask them, what is it that you value? Is it finding your niche? Is it, the title that you have? Is it earning money? And so you add all those things up and say, okay, well, you are the director of campus programming. What values are instilled in that position? And what do you want to get in 2 years from now? What do you want? Well, okay, what does doing the director of campus program get you 2 years from now? So you can have those conversations with these students about these values, these motivations, and inventory that, so are they in the right position? And if not, what can we do to get them into maybe to a different position that'll kind of cater to what their end goal is. And so you want to create that positive relationship with your students. These are two different presidents that I've had along my way here. And you want to be able to connect with them and maintain a sense of professionalism with your students, especially if you are in a professional level position. But maintain whatever boundaries you feel comfortable with, but also know that your students are looking to connect with you. What that means, learning a little bit personally about your life, and know who you are. If you have your apartment, your space within your building that you don't want your students in, great, that's fine. That's a boundary you can have, but don't let certain things hinder you from building a relationship with them, because those can be some of the best connections that you have today. The student here on the right, he's actually here today for the Midwest affiliate of College and University Residence Hall's conference on campus. He does not live on campus anymore, but he's here today to attend this conference with some of our other students remotely, and he's presenting. And the reason that he is because I reached out to him to say that he should present based on the relationship that we've had for 4 years now. And so him as a student would not be here today presenting at the conference had it not be for the reach out that I've had. I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but knowing that the connection that I made to Corey here has helped him do more presentations, do more public speaking, which was one of his goals as a student leader. And that happened because of the relationship that we've built over time. You know, and so a lot of these things here that I'm sharing with you are the things that I've learned along the way, or the things I've learned the hard way, that I didn't try at first and had to learn the hard way based on the experience I've had with students or didn't have. You know, you want to create an open door policy with your officers to welcome non-business conversations. So if you welcome your staff members to come in and say hi, you welcome your peers to come in, welcome your student leaders to come in visit you in your office to say hi, or check in on how your day is going, for you to check in on them, how they're doing personally, because they want to be able to know that you're not just there for the business side. They want to know that you invest in them as a person as well. Create connections between those officers and those that support your organization, and always be consistent with how you work with your officers. You know, again, you have to be adaptive to change over time with what your students need. However, be consistent with how you work with them along the way. And if you change up your style, ask for feedback on, hey, I'm doing things a little bit differently now. How do you all feel about this? And you all know, as being students yourselves, you're going to be honest and tell them how you feel. And you want your students to be honest with you as well, so they know exactly what to give back to you. So I want you all to ponder this. You know, in your experience, what advising style has worked well for you, and what are some methods you would carry on as an advisor? And so if there's anyone attending here that wants to vocally speak up right now about, you know, what an advisor has done for you that has worked well in the past, and what are you going to carry forward, feel free to share it with us right now. And if you don't, that's okay. I don't want to force anyone to speak if they don't want to. So if you have anything, you can definitely unmute and share that if you want. Anybody has anything? As okay. For context with that question, I think about this because one of my biggest philosophies is be who you needed when you were younger. That's one of the things that I stand by as a professional now is, what did a 19-year-old Jay need as from an advisor, from a student affairs professional to succeed? What did I not get from them? And what did I get that helps me be the person I am today? So I think about the advisors that I had along the way that cared about me as a person. When I was failing classes or not doing well, what did they do to help me succeed in my student leadership position and challenge me to do better? You know, when I didn't have a family to go back home to, what did they provide me as a student to make sure I felt welcomed at this university and part of the community? And so you think about in your time as a student leader in your 4 years or however long it takes you, for me it was 5 and it's perfectly fine. You know, what did you need as a student leader? Did you get it? If you did, what are you going to take with you to model that with your students when you have them? And then 2, if you did not get that experience, or you had a negative experience, what did you learn from that? And it's not for you to bash that professional that did not give that to you, but what does that change in your heart and in your style that you will then give to your students later on? That's the biggest lesson I want to give as you adapt your style and your experience. Something I typically can, when we do a presentation in person, I can usually give out a survey, have you all fill it out, and ponder why advisors exist. So if you're familiar with NACUR, which is the National Association of College and University Residence Halls, they did a survey in 2012. They've updated since then, I believe. But they asked advisors and they asked students, why do you exist? Or why does advisors exist? And so, our advisors shared top 10 list of why they exist. So serving as an information resource and liaison, interpreter of policies, motivator, continuity, risk management, attending meetings, which you think would be just number 1, that you need to be there, but apparently need to be in writing, meet with the executive board, orientation of new officers, and understanding theories and models. So these are the kind of the 10 basic things that they agreed on. And so then they also asked the students, because you can think about why you exist, and until your students tell you, you don't have the full picture. And so that's what we want to give you. So if you look at the screen, you can see serving as an informational resource, what's in common is number 1. But number 2 from students is they needed an advisor who motivates and encourages them. So that was number 2, even though most advisors thought that was further down. You can see that, policies and procedures was number 3 for students. So they need to know the context, like I mentioned earlier. What is the history that they need to know, why they can't do a program, because context is important to them. Possession, knowledge of viability, risk management, all that stuff kind of sat in the middle with both advisors and students. And while we think we want to confront negative behavior as a higher thing, students felt that was a number 10 is like the last thing that the advisor stood for. So keep in mind what your perspective is why you exist as an advisor, but also don't forget why students feel you exist, and ask them what is your role and what do they think you are there for, because they may have a different understanding, especially if they don't understand maybe what your role is at the university. A lot of times I still get confused for a student, so they feel like I'm a student leader too. And so I have to kind of explain what my professional, daytime role is here, my position at the university, but also explain what it means that I'm an advisor to this group and what that role is. And some tips to leave you all with before I end the presentation today. Always communicate with your team and group, whether that means individually or one-on-one. Always meet with your students one-on-one. What they feel they can share in a group may be different with what they share individually with you. So they might not feel confident to speak up in a group, but they might get you with you one-on-one, and they're going to open up more. Maybe they have an issue with another group member. Maybe they're having some personal issues, and they'll open up a little bit more one-on-one. So always make sure you communicate, whether it be in the group, but as well one-on-one with your students. Avoiding a problem will not make it go away. You probably have learned that as a student and a student leader yourself. So make sure you interact with your students and chat about issues that are going on, chat about challenges. I do have a rule that if you have an issue with someone else, if you don't drop it in 48 hours, then you need to let it go and move on and discuss it with them. Make sure you commit yourself to the group and all your groups. If you advise different groups, make sure you cannot be 100% to everybody all the time, but do your best to give your all to your student groups. So, if you supervise a staff and you also advise a different group, share your styles with them. Don't give one thing to another that you want to give to the other one as well. And so try to be a role model to those groups 100% as well. And know that they're looking at you to contribute just as much. If they don't see you contributing, why are they going to do it? So they see you putting your heart, your soul into work that you do. They're going to find more reason to give 100% of their work as well. You're that role model, just as they're going to be the role models for the students that get joined into the organization because they're recruiting them as well. In motivation, find out what motivates them. Find out what values they have, what they want out of this position, what this position will get them in the future, what that means to transferable skills for their career. If they want to become a senator and student government so they can become SGA president later on, great. So what values can we find in this position here to get you to be SGA president later on? So find out what motivates them and use those values to spark their student leader positions on campus. Know that students need to feel valued. Human beings need to feel valued, and we need to feel like we're appreciated. Understand what is their appreciation language or love language. Is it words of affirmation? Is it quality time with you as their advisor in their group? Find out what motivates them, but also how they like to be recognized. Be enthusiastic. Late night meetings can drain us. I have a meeting weekly at 8 p.m. and sometimes I'm just tired. But if I sat there drained all the time and just didn't care, they wouldn't put in the effort as well. So they need to see that, I might have an energy drink in hand, or some nights I'm a little sluggish, but they still need to know that my heart is in the work that I do. Remember, the experience is not about you. Once you graduate, you've had your experience. Your reason for joining the field of student affairs is to help students, yourself now as a professional. So make the experience about them, help them build their student leadership skills because you built yours. Now it's your turn to help return a favor and build theirs and build them up as student leaders. And then last, have fun. It can be one of the most rewarding experiences. All the students, not all of them, but the majority of the students that I still can stay connected to from my last position or long-term are the ones that I had because of advising, because I allow myself to open up a little bit more, to them and have those great relationships because I created those within the student organizations that I advise. And so I think you all will find that experience as well. So that is all the presentation I have today. I know that was a lot of information. I know that wasn't the most interactive presentation, but I feel like the words that I shared and the experiences I have can truly provide some context for how to build your style as an advisor for a student group, as well as if you advise a student one-on-one, or even just creating relationships with students in general, because obviously that's the reason why we're all in this field together.